So if one side of your brain is going negativity first, great. Learn to flip the switch. Go, great. What's the positive side of that? Meditation is a practice of awareness. It's a practice of going internal instead of external, which is where most people live their lives every day.
When I looked inside myself and took the prerequisite of responsibility, I own it.
Yes.
And I can change it.
So important.
That transformed my life.
Need motivation?
Watch a Top 10 with Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 and 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 and 9. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because chances are you are the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, John Assaraf, and my take on his top 10 rules for success. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Flip the switch.
If you think about what makes up who we are. So obviously there's genetics. There's our genetic makeup, so our predisposition, our propensities. And that makes up a percentage of how we see the world and how we show up. But then the rest of it, we're trained on. So we're trained to see the world a certain way. So there are certain people that have something called a negativity bias. And a negativity bias is nothing more than they see the negative first. It's not that they don't see the positive, but they see the negative first. There's other people who see positive first. They have a positivity bias and they see that first. And the truth is, in almost every situation, in every circumstance, there's both. You can train somebody to recognize that there's always both, just like every inside has an outside, every one side of a coin has another side of a coin, every up has a down. That's called the law of polarity. And in the universe that we live in, there is that law of polarity. And so you can teach somebody, say, okay, if your propensity, if the way you naturally are is negativity biased first, great, be aware of that. Then flip over. We call it flip the switch. So if one side of your brain is going negativity first, great. Learn to flip the switch. Go, great. What's the positive side of that? That's a skill you can learn no differently than playing tennis or chess or music.
Rule number 2, listen to your intuition.
When you sit down to meditate, do you come with an intention then each time?
No, once I sit down, then I ask my intuition, hey, what is it that you want to be doing today? What is it that you need today? So we all have this intuition, which is different than our instinct. But this intuition, right, it's what we know before we think. And so when I sit down, I say, okay, hey, what's the intention for today? And sometimes the intention is to just let go and see what happens. Sometimes the intention is I'm searching for an answer. Sometimes the intention is, well, today focus. Today let go. Today just breathe. So I just listen. It's the art and the subtle science of paying attention.
Rule number 3, prime yourself.
Back in 1987, when I bought the franchising rights for Remax of Indiana, I had no idea how to build a company. I was, 26 years old, and but I had another mentor who I invested $75,000 to become his partner, to have the opportunity to learn from this man who at the time was worth probably $100 million. And so I was very, very keen on learning, and I didn't know how to build a business. I didn't know anything other than how to sell real estate. And I set a goal to generate $1 billion a year in sales. And I set the goal for 5 years in the future, not knowing $1 billion goal is like mind-boggling big for me. And there was an interview the second week I was in Indianapolis. I moved from Toronto to Indianapolis for this opportunity. And I was interviewed by the Indianapolis Business Journal. And I said in the interview that I had a goal for $1 billion. And the reporter said, are you aware that there's two companies that have been in the state of Indiana for 80 years, one, 100 years, the other one, and they haven't hit $1 billion in real estate sales in all of these years? And I said, yeah, I know, it's Graves and Tucker, and you can let them know that I'll be the first. Right? And as I said that, I almost felt like I put my foot right in my mouth because I didn't know how I was going to do it.
Right.
Long story short, 5 years later, we sold enough franchise, recruited enough agents. We did $1.2 billion, and we were stuck, which is a great place to be stuck. And I was asking myself, how is it possible that I'm training these agents with strategies, with tactics, with selling skills, marketing skills? We were like the gurus of here's the books, here's the cassettes, here's the trainers, here's like out of the deep end. And the agents who, for example, would make $30,000 a year kept making $30,000 a year. The agents who made 50 kept making 50. The agents who made 100 kept making 100. And so I realized that they weren't missing the skills or the knowledge. There was something else at play. And what helped me from the age of 19 to 27, 28, 30 was every single day, and I still do it today, and I'll share this with you in just a little bit. Every single day, I was priming my brain with the beliefs and the self-image required to achieve the goals that I wanted.
Rule number 4, recognize your behaviors.
When we talk about reprogramming, I think the important thing to understand is 99.9% of what we think, what we feel, and what we do, although most people think I'm in control and I'm the one doing it, it's really non-conscious patterns that are repeating themselves over and over again. So let me explain. When you and I were born, the only neural networks that we had were for survival, right? We didn't have any beliefs of, are we good enough? Are we smart enough? Are we worthy? We didn't have any experiences to show us that that's a scary situation, that one's not. Snakes are safe, or snakes are dangerous, or spiders, or heights, or whatever the case is. So over the course of the first 7 to 10 years of our life, our brain's plasticity switch, our brain's switch that connects all of these neurons and creates the neural map in our brain is being created in the form of millions of connections per second. By the time we're 10 or 12 years old, that switch basically goes off, and now there's more selective creation of neural patterns based on what we like, what we dislike, what we experience, what our parents tell us, what our teachers tell us. Up until that time, we're just an empty, open nest where everything's being formulated. And so what happens is after 10, 12 years old, we're pretty much running on autopilot. And we become conditioned or trained to see the world a certain way, to feel certain things, to behave in certain ways. And so most of our life we're working on autopilot because the non-conscious processing parts of our brain is working at 400 billion bits of information per second and trillions of electrical and chemical reactions per second happening without our thinking about it. And so for adults, 25, 35, 45, 50, we have these patterns that we have to revamp, almost like a remodeling of our own brains. If you think about, when you're driving in a town that whether you're at home or in your city that and all of a sudden you see a detour. If you take a detour and then you start driving down that new detour for a day, 7 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that detour becomes the new easy road to take. Even though you're used to going a certain way. The brain works the exact same way. So if you've got these patterns that are easy for you, your brain wants to take those patterns that are easy for you. Easy thinking patterns, easy emotional patterns, easy behavioral patterns. Why? Number one, because it's less energy that the brain needs to use. So law of best use of energy in the brain is where it goes first. So the way you retrain your brain using, for example, the 4R process is you recognize my patterns of thought, my patterns of emotion, my patterns of behaviors. And you ask yourself, are these going to help me achieve the goal that I want to achieve? Whatever the goal is. It's just yes or no. If they are, great. If they're not, then what you want to be doing is saying, okay, how do I change that path? How do I change my thinking? Hey, this is John Assaraf, and do you love good books? I love to read because there's so much wisdom in books. You get to take somebody else's knowledge, skills, research, pay $15-20, and you learn so much. Now, I'm reading this awesome book called Built to Serve. Find your purpose and become the leader you were born to be. And one of my new friends, really smart guy, really great guy who serves a lot of people, Evan Carmichael, wrote it. And I'm going to read a little bit from chapter number 1. And I love this piece. And maybe it's because I just watched the series on TV on Michael Jordan, The Last Dance, which is really great, by the way, also. One of the things he says here is everybody has Michael Jordan talent at something. Everybody has a Michael Jordan talent at something. You just haven't found it yet. Or you have and you don't believe in yourself enough to go all in. To go all in, right? And you're a genius. I believe you're a genius. And so does he. You're amazing. You were not meant to live a photocopy of someone else's life. You were not created to wake up and do work that is below your capabilities. You have Michael Jordan level talent at something, and you need to uncover exactly what your purpose is and how you can serve and use the serve. So lots of pearls and gems and motivational pieces. Pick up Built to Serve. Evan Carmichael, rising star.
Rule number 5, practice meditation.
I'm learning that I could be still. I'm learning that I could be aware of my thoughts, but then let them go, and I come back to focus on a sound wave in this particular meditation. And then what happens is, over a period of practice, you realize that your body disappears. You're no longer in this physical thing. You're no longer having these waves of thought after thought after thought after thought after thought after idea, positive, negative, and everything in between. And in that space of recognizing that I'm not my physical body, I have a physical body. I'm not my thoughts, I have thoughts. I'm not my emotions, I have them. When you start to train yourself to use your brain better, more efficiently, more productively, you realize that I am one with this, incredible universe. So what's the big deal about that? Well, the big deal is that if I am one with this universe, with this energy, with everyone and everything, and that's where everything percolates from, is it possible that all my answers are right here, right now anyway? And the answer is yeah. And so meditation is about practicing, and we know that we have different brain waves. So right now, as people are watching or listening, they're in this beta brainwave frequency where their brain is oscillating at a certain frequency, and there's 50 different brainwaves going on at any given time. But what happens is when I move from beta to alpha to theta, delta, or gamma, I'm actually accessing and activating different parts of my brain, which now gives me this deeper, greater sense of awareness of a much bigger, onion that I'm used to seeing. So I'm living on a layer of an onion. And what if I could see like 10 layers up and 10 layers down? So all of a sudden it's like, wow, look at who I am, what I am, who you are, what you are. And in that realization, in that awareness, I can now start to have different choices made. And so meditation is a practice of awareness. It's a practice of going internal instead of external, which is where most people live their lives every day.
Rule number 6, understand your brain.
The key is to really understand, first and foremost, that you have a brain. You're not your brain. The whole idea with inner size, right, is to create a pathway for you to be able to say, okay, here's how my brain works, simply as I've put it today, and here's what I could do about it to move out of a state of chaos and dissonance and into a state of coherence and alignment.
Rule number 7, have powerful beliefs.
When you were born, were you born with any beliefs?
No.
Were you born with any habits?
No.
Were you born with any fears?
No.
No. So from a neuroscience and neuropsychology perspective, a belief is nothing more than this. Imagine that you're born and your brain's made up of 100 billion marbles. And every time you have an experience or somebody says something to you, you read something or you watch something, these marbles make these connections. And the connections that are reinforced go from conscious connections to subconscious connections. And once these subconscious connections are made and reinforced, they run the show 98% of the time. So a belief is nothing more than a reinforced pattern in the brain. And our conscious brain can choose what we want when we're in that part of our brain, but our subconscious mind can't choose. It's programmed from the age of 0 to 3 in the imprinting years, 3 to about 7 or 8, the modeling years, and then 8 on, it's the experiential years. And so if you have these powerful beliefs that you're good enough, you're smart enough, you're worthy to achieve the goals that you have. If you have these powerful beliefs, you are able to achieve any amount of income you choose, no matter what the amount is, you just need to learn how. So if you have these empowering beliefs, you have brain coherence between conscious and subconscious.
Rule number 8, follow the 4 R's process.
We're in a society that just goes. Texts, emails, phone calls, Facebook, Twitter, Vine. All these things are keeping us on this perpetual hamster wheel of do, that very few people stop and say, what am I doing? What am I not doing? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? So the first part is stop. Second part is to reframe. It's called the 4R process. Recognize is first. Reframe is the way I'm looking at something. And because we are monofocused, the brain cannot focus consciously on more than one thing at a time. All right? It can get distracted to that thing, then this thing, then that thing, then this thing. The art of multitasking is actually one of the worst things that you can do from a neurological perspective. Highly successful people are able to monofocus on the right things. So when you learn to reframe your brain's ability to look at this, then look at this, then look at this, but stay focused on what it is that you're looking at, you see different perspectives of it. The next part is to release the emotional stress that most people's brains are under. How do we get into this emotional stress? Well, when we have fears, there's 50 different types of fears. Fear of success, fear of failure, fear of disappointment, fear of being embarrassed, fear of being ashamed, fear of being ridiculed, fear of fill in the blank. When our brain goes on these automatic fear circuit drives, then we're in a state of fight or flight. In a state of fight or flight, over a course of a day, a week, a month, our ability to actually use our thinking center, the left prefrontal cortex of our brain, actually diminishes. Our brain gets hijacked into this fight or flight response system over and over and over and over and over again. And that response system is actually pretty healthy initially to get you going and out of the gate. But if you are always in this fight or flight response mechanism, you're on this hamster wheel, you actually start to get burnt out. And you can't think, you can't use the genius part of your brain. You can't really activate the part of you that connects to the entire universe of intelligence within you and outside of you. And so you learn to release that tension to be able to put the foot back on the gas, change the gear. If you think about what happens when you're driving a stick shift car, you put your foot on the gas in first gear and the car just goes. But if you keep your foot on the gas in first gear, you're going to burn out the engine. So what happens in the release part of using your brain is you go from first gear, pause, second gear, pause, third gear, pause. You're able to use the engine more efficiently to go faster. Exact same thing with our brains. If we learn how to release the tension and switch gears, release the tension, switch gears, that's the art of release and go. And that causes the 4th R, and that's we retrain our brain to operate at higher levels of our intelligence, genius, and abilities.
Rule number 9, change the patterns.
What happens if at the subconscious level, okay, so you have conscious, goal, conscious vision, conscious reasons why I want to achieve it. What happens if at the subconscious level, let's say for weight, you've tried to lose weight before, and maybe you have, but then you've gained it back? What if you've done that 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times? Is that pattern, okay, the memory, the pattern, locked in the subconscious mind of all those experiences? Is it there? So here's how the brain works. You set a goal using the left prefrontal cortex of your brain, your imagination, and then right after you set the goal and you're excited because you're making some progress, your brain says, hey, last time you did this, you gained all the weight back. Why even try? Last time you did this, and your friends saw that you did this, and then you gained all the weight back. Next time you saw them, you were embarrassed. You were a little ashamed of yourself. Last time you did this, or the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times before that, you gained all the weight back, and you disappointed yourself and your significant other because, you know, they said you looked really great, and then you gained all the weight back. So you disappointed them and yourself, and you were embarrassed or ashamed. And so that pattern is there, right? Do you all agree with me so far? The pattern is there. And so if you have, and think about your imagination and your choice to set a goal is one pattern that you formulate. But if underneath there's a subconscious pattern of embarrassment, shame, failure, guilt, disappointment, etc. If that pattern is also there, then you have 2 opposing patterns. You have one pattern that says, let's go and do this, but you have another pattern that says, but last time you did this, you failed, or you've seen your sister or brother or mother or father or friend do this, and guess what? They gained all the weight back anyway. So why even try? I'm going to keep you safe in your comfort zone. I'm going to conserve energy, and that way I'm going to save you some time and money and energy. Does that make sense to you? That is called cognitive dissonance. That is another way of saying that's called chaos in the brain. And a brain in chaos will do what? It'll just stick around doing the things that it's comfortable doing where it's known.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is take responsibility.
Something that I learned that I think people will benefit from is an anxiety attack, stress, panic, ulcerative colitis. All of these things are effects, right? So they're effects. So the question is, what's the cause?
Yes.
Right? So most people are focusing on either, suppressing the effects, depressing the effects, masking the effects. They're doing everything but going, what's causing this?
Yep.
And if we look at the world of cause, whether it's in our physical body, whether it's our relationship, whether it's our bank account, whether it's our business, whatever the result is, every result in the physical world is an effect. So the question is, what causes the results? And one of the greatest laws in the universe is the law of cause and effect. And it states that for every effect, there's a cause. And for every cause, there's an effect. And so I got really inquisitive and curious early on with, can I control more of the cause of my results? And that required responsibility. And when I was younger, it was like, I was more into the blame game. It's because of him, because of her, because of it, because of the market, because of where I live, because of my mother, my father, how old I am or how young I am, how Asian or Caucasian I am. It doesn't make a difference. So a lot of my upbringing caused me to look outside of myself. And when I looked inside myself and took the prerequisite of responsibility. I own it.
Yes.
And I can change it.
So important.
That transformed my life. That really started to put things into perspective.
Now I've got a special bonus clip that I think you're gonna enjoy. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I wanna know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video? And what is your specific plan of action for the next week? When you just watch a video and get motivated by it, you have a 35% chance of following through. But when you get motivated and then create a specific plan of action, you have a 91% chance of following through. That's what we do here, Believe Nation. We get motivated, but then we do something about it. And when you commit to other people, you increase your chances even further of following through. So, what was your biggest takeaway from this video? And then what is your plan of action around it for this week? Put it down in the comments below because I want to celebrate you.
When we talk about the word fear, right? So let me start off with another little premise here is most people are highly ignorant in understanding what fear is. Now, I want to make sure people heard me correctly. Ignorance doesn't mean you are stupid. Ignorance means you just don't know. We're all ignorant.
We don't know what we don't know.
Well, we don't know what we don't know, and even the things that we do know may not be accurate. So when we talk about fear, there are 50 different types of fear. All fear is processed in the subconscious mind. The automatic neurochemistry that is created as a result of the meaning that we give certain things that cause us to either be in a state of fear or a state of courageousness is all being processed in our subconscious mind. So what causes fear for you doesn't cause fear for me or for somebody else, or may cause fear in other people. So whether we're standing at the top of a building that's 100 stories high, some people look over and don't have fear, and other people do have fear. Whether there's a giant 10-foot boa constrictor, in front of you may cause fear in you, that doesn't cause fear in another person. So it's never the thing that is causing the fear. It's the subconscious interpretation that we've been conditioned to believe. The meaning that we learn to give something determines whether the neurochemistry of fear is activated that causes us to feel a certain way. So the feeling, of being scared, the feeling of being uncertain, this feeling of having self-doubt, the feeling of having too much stress in our life, that is an effect, not a cause. So feelings are conscious, our ability to be aware of this stuff that's going on in our body that we either know or don't know how to handle or do anything with. So feeling is conscious. Fear is subconscious. And so if, for example, we have, one of the examples I use is, and you don't have this, obviously, but if I ask 100 people, do you have a fear of public speaking?
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say that.
I'm reading your mind. I'm reading your mind. Well, it's not your fear. And this is what I'm going to say. So the actual fear is of being embarrassed, ashamed, ridiculed, or judged. So if we're afraid of being embarrassed, ashamed, ridiculed, or judged, that has nothing to do with the actual public speaking. It has to do with our self-image and self-esteem and what we think of ourselves and what we believe others will say or think about us, which will affect our own self-image or self-esteem. So fear is triggered based on subconscious patterns and feelings of certainty about something that may or may not be right. And so I never treat, if you like animals and you like fish, for example, if the fish is sick, you never treat the fish, you treat the water.
Ooh, that's good. I like that one.
Right, you treat the water. Because it's the water that's causing the fish to be sick. And so whenever we're dealing with fear, fear is a signal. So if we're driving our car together, we're driving down the street, and all of a sudden there's a light that pops up on your dash. You go, oh my God, the light came on. No, it's a signal. There's either something, maybe the trunk opened, maybe you're low on air, maybe there's a leak in your oil, maybe your coolant in your engine needs topping up. The light is just a signal that something in the engine is going on. So when we have this emotion that's triggered, okay, at the subconscious level that gives us this feeling that we don't like or we don't know how to deal with, the light goes on, okay, in our brain.
We start experiencing those emotions.
We start
those
experiencing
feelings.
those emotions. And so when we get into, so why is that relevant? And it's relevant because the number one priority of the brain, above all else, okay, above sex, above eating, above all else, is survival and safety first. So when that fear signal is activated in the brain, your brake goes on, your motivation stops, your thinking brain deactivates, and you're either going to fight it, you're going to freeze, you're going to run away, or you're going to faint. Those are the 4 F's of fear, of what happens when that response happens. And to the untrained person, it controls them. To the trained person, like a Navy SEAL, like a firefighter has to learn how to feel fear and go into a burning building. Like an astronaut, she has to learn how to step out of the space station and go work with a robotic arm, knowing that she might be blown away into space. She has fears as well. He has fears as well. And so fear is just a signal. It's not a stop sign. It's not a go sign. It's a be aware sign.
Yep.
If you want 10 more awesome rules from John Assaraf, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
So people ask me, like, when do you stop? Never.
Awareness is what actually gives us choice, and choice is what actually gives us freedom if we make the right choices.